recordings. I often go to search for old jazz recordings, and you can't find them anywhere else. And sure enough, they're on YouTube of all places. So are we up and running?
Yes, sir.
All right, I'd like to call this City of Charleston City Council Budget Workshop to order. And Amy has quite a comprehensive presentation for us all. Before we start, I'd just like to thank her and all of her staff at Budget and Finance for incredible work they've done. You'll see from this presentation the amazing amount of work that goes into it, and admittedly they compile it all together, but it reaches down to each department coming up with their department budget and setting priorities, and it's quite a process we go through every year, and each year seems to have its challenges, and this is no exception. So without further ado, but a special thanks to all the staff that's been involved. Amy, you want to take it away? And it's an amazing presentation. Amy? I guess I will call for our moment of silence of prayer as we deliberate this budget for next year, and the service that we can render to our citizens and our city over 2023 as a result. Join me in a moment of silence. Amen. Thank you very much. Now, I believe she's going to cover where we kind of stand right now, year to date in 2022, before we move forward to our budget discussions for next year. Amy?
Good afternoon, everyone. I do have a lot of slides, so I will try to go through them expeditiously. Just where we are right now as of September 30th, General Fund, Enterprise Fund expenditures were about $7.2 million under budget. If you want, I can stay on the slide for a second so you can look at it. Otherwise, I'll move forward.
That's a good thing.
So we're like, for salary savings, we're ahead of target through September. We budgeted $6 million in 2022. Right now, we've taken about 5.7. So we'll be well above what we budgeted for salary savings in 2022. Gas, oil, and lubricants are over target. I have a fuel slide. We can talk about that in a little bit, but obviously with fuel prices went a little bit crazy on us this year. So that's understandable. And vehicle repairs are over about 207,000, but majority of that's from the police department. And that was kind of an anomaly with them because as everyone knows, it takes forever to get things done these days with supply chain issues. So some of the vehicles, there was a delay in getting them repaired. So we received the insurance proceeds in 21, but the repairs didn't happen until 2022. So that was just a one-off sort of thing that happened this year. Like I said, most departments were under budget as of September 30th, 7.2 million. Everybody's under budget for personnel expenditures with the exception of fire and human resources. And most departments are under budget operationally with the exception of police and recreation. For police, it's because of those vehicle repairs and also fuel, which would make sense. And then recreation is because they're fully up and running again. They're having a lot of tennis lessons and other contracts. So their expenses are higher, but they have the revenues to offset those expenses. So it's not really an issue. It just, because the revenues are in a different area, obviously it makes the expenses like they're over budget, but they're fine. Any questions on any of that? Okay. This is fuel costs. We have been in ad hoc talking about this since probably April. Price per gallon, we budgeted $3.50 a gallon, which is where we've been for the past few years. The price per gallon as of September 30th was $3.47, but it had been, as you can see right here, In March, it was $4.01, $3.98 in April, $4.45. So we're over time have been every month a little bit over budget. So right now, if we stay here, we'll be about $196,000 over budget for the year. If it does increase more, then obviously we'll be probably over budget more than that. But it looks, hopefully it'll stay stable.
Councilmember Parker, then Shade.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Amy. So the 350 per gallon, is this also including like the environmental services and the diesel charges, things like that?
Yes, it's the price per gallon that we're paying regardless. Because we have a contract with Mansfield Oil.
Oh, I understand. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Councilmember Shade.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Moving, can I move on? Everybody's good with that? Okay, revenues. Most revenues are tracking over budget with the exception of permits and fees, which is mostly due to inspection fees and building permit fees, which are coming in under targeted amounts. Biggest areas that are tracking over targeted amounts are business licenses and state of South Carolina, which is our local option sales tax revenue primarily. And that is the graphs on that. Councilmember Shade, do you just have a question?
No, I'm sorry to put my hand down. Goodbye.
Okay. I just want to make sure
Yep, sorry.
everybody's good. Any questions? Okay. So enterprise revenues, all are tracking over budget as of the end of September. Strong performances with the city market and the golf course and parking. And then, if you're ready, I'm sorry, I'll move into tourism. I have like 70 something slides, so I'm sorry. It's 5 o'clock at night.
Amy, just slow down a little bit.
Okay, I will.
Thank you.
You want me to stay on enterprise or can I move forward to tourism? Okay, I'll go forward. So tourism as of September 30th, we're looking really, really good. We've talked about this many times before. We're at 94.88% of our budget as of the end of September for municipal aid tax, 99 for state aid tax, 83.87 for hospitality, and 93.84% of budget for tourism ticket fees. So we're looking good for tourism fees. Any questions on that? Okay, and then this is just a graph of all the major revenues. You can see the darker blue is 2019, orange is 2020, just the year of the pandemic. 2022 budget is in gray, actual is in yellow, and then the 2021 actual is lighter blue. So you can kind of see where we're moving since 2019. Okay, and then financially, we're in good shape. That's really all I have to say.
So that's a good, concise conclusion. And if I may add, you were 7.2 million under budget on expenses. And then between general and enterprise funds, you were 16.6 million over on the revenue. So that's a swing of about $24 million to the good year to date over budget. Would that be sound about right? In other words, we're in good shape, and that echoes what our accountant report was for last year's overall budget as well. Councilmember Shade?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Quick question. I aside from what you showed us with the gasoline prices and the police department's over budget expenses, are there anything else that we should be worried about down the road between now and the end of the year for any major budget expenses?
I don't think so, Councilmember Shade. I think we're in pretty good shape.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Councilmember Saccharin?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Amy. Just two quick questions. On the expense side, you noted that we were lower, $10 million lower than anticipated.
7.2 million total, I think.
I'll go back. So 7.2, Councilmember Saccharin.
And then would you attribute most of that to kind of our unfilled labor needs?
I think a lot of it is that, just not being able to get things done that we have budgeted for.
Okay. And my last question, and maybe you'll get to it in one of the other 60 remaining slides. How are we preparing for the potential for an economic downturn next year? So
I will go through that when we talk about our revenue projections, how we projected those revenues.
Okay.
If you don't mind waiting.
Nope.
Okay, so now we'll go to 2023 budget, where we are in putting that together. So preliminary revenues for general fund and enterprise funds. This is what it looks like right now. 2023 base is 271 million, between 229 for general fund and 41 for enterprise. It's about 17.2 million higher than 2022. And then these are assumptions, Councilmember Saccharin, that I'll kind of go through. Charleston County, we're projecting a growth rate of 1% for vehicles and 3% for all real property. Projected tax credit factor is 0.00092. 2022, what we set the tax credit factor at was 0.0094. So it's just a little bit less than 2022. And the amount of loss credited is 28.3 million. Berkeley County, we're projecting growth rates of 5% for vehicles and 6% for all other real property. And the tax credit factors are there. 2.9 million lost credited. And value of a mill is approximately $1.7 million. Okay, local option sales tax, 2022, we budgeted 23.7 million. Projections after 7 months, it's 27.8 million. We're projecting 2023 at 28.3. That's the same amount that it's credited. And then we're assuming 3% growth, lower than the trend based on our future economic uncertainty. So that's where we stayed pretty conservative, Councilmember Saccharin, on local option sales tax. Same with Berkeley County as well. We're projecting about 2.9, so we're budgeting 2.9.
And Mr. Mayor, Amy, Councilmember Gregory has.
Councilmember Gregory, thank you.
Yeah, Amy, there was an article in, I think, Sunday's paper, and they were talking about Charleston may not feel the full effect of the slowdown. Has anyone had an opportunity to read that? I thought it was quite fascinating that even if we go into a recession, the slowdown may not affect us like it will affect other cities because of our industries, tourism, et cetera, et cetera.
I saw that. Yes, Councilmember, that's right. We enjoy a blessed, diversified economy at this point.
Yes. Okay. Just wanted to sort of bring that to people's attention. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So Amy, just to interpret this, just taking Charleston County as the example here that you have on top. So we budgeted that we would receive, in essence, $23.7 million of sales tax. And just even after 7 months, sales taxes collections must be notably higher than what we had projected for this year. You're saying we've already collected 27, or that's what you're now projecting we'll collect through the end of the year?
That's through the end of the year, Mayor.
through the
We're
end,
projecting it based on the 7 months of information that we have
right.
through
And,
the, right.
and so you're assuming for next year, you'll have just a 3% growth, so that's conservative. And, but all of these funds are what make up what gets credited back to the property tax bill, correct? As far as what LOST or local option sales tax.
That's right. 100%.
100%, right. Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Business licenses, we budgeted $39.7 million. 2% of that goes to the drainage fund, which is about 795,000. 2022 projection is $43 million. That would change the 2% drainage amount. So we're projecting about 43.9 in 2023.
All right. Any question on that?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Parker has her hand
Oh,
up.
Councilmember Parker, yeah. Yes, ma'am. Oh, you're on mute.
Councilmember Gregory, I saw your hand as well. Did you have a question or you were before me?
No, I didn't put my hand down. Sorry about that.
So real quick, and I know, I'm obviously learning, but so this business, so is there a possibility that the drainage fund, we can increase that percentage for 2023?
It's an ordinance, Councilmember Parker.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Welcome. And it just hurts the general fund, which needs as much revenue as it can get, but I mean, it's will of council. Franchise fees, 2022, electric and gas, we budgeted 11.1, cable is 1.5, estimates is 11.8 and 1.6. 2023 projection, we're keeping electric and gas around the same 11.8, and cable TV, we're just noticing that dropping a little, so we put that at 1.5. Building permits, we budgeted 3 million, plan review 2 million. We're under budget in both of those. So we're staying very conservative in 2023 for both of those, 2.3 and 1.6 respectively. Okay, parking revenues, right now, 2022 budgets, 19.2 for garages and lots and 2.8, almost 2.9 for meters. We're projecting 22.3 for garages and lots and 3.2 for meters. And then we always budget conservatively. You all know that. We specifically looked at tourism, building fees, business licenses, local option sales tax, those that are kind of more economic driven. And we noted in the last recession that certain revenues were impacted earlier, whereas others took longer to be impacted. And because of that, that's just what made us a little bit more conservative in some areas for certain revenues. And I have a graph that kind of shows why we did that. But Councilmember Parker, you had a question?
Yes, thank you, Amy. Back to the last slide. I'm just curious, where do the parking revenues go? Do they wind up in the general fund as well, or?
They're an enterprise fund.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome. So we looked back at the past recession that we went through in 2008 into like basically through 2012. And if you see the blue dots, I know my ad hoc committee has already seen this, but I love this graph so much I have to show it again. The blue dots show the pre-recession revenue peak, and the red horizontal lines or bars show the lowest level of revenue collected during the recession, and the purple dots indicate when we return to our pre-recession levels of revenue. So most of our revenues hit their lowest points in 2010. And we noted the hospitality fees, if you see here, came back pretty quickly, which is ironically the same thing that happened during the pandemic. and that construction related fees started to drop the earliest and they took the longest to rebound. So that's why Councilmember Second, we're being ultra conservative with those, because that could be an indication that we're heading into a little bit of a recession. So that's why we kept them where lower than normal. So anybody have any questions on that? Kind of explains where our thought process is. Okay, so looking at tourism revenues for 2023 budget, this state accommodations tax, all of our tourism revenues are doing really, really well. We're projecting about 12 million in the top, I'm sorry, state accommodations tax for 2023. The transfer into the general fund will be 623,750. That's 5% as dictated by law. And just so you know, as soon as it moves into the general fund, it loses its character. So it no longer has the restriction for tourism related expenditures. Municipal accommodations, that's a 2% collected by hotels. The ordinance is 1% and 1%. So 1% goes towards capital projects and 1% goes towards operations to decrease the tax burden on our citizens. We're projecting around 11 million in 2023. So 5.5 of that would go for capital projects and 5.5 will go towards operations. Any questions on that? We'll bring those budgets to you later as well.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Parker had her hand up.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's okay. I put it down. I was just curious if did we see in another slide where those, not the projections, but the actual, where did the accommodations tax that wound up, that went to the general fund, the 5.5 and the 5.5 for capital and for operations, what they were given to? What they were used for, I'm sorry.
So they would have been in the 2022 municipal accommodations tax budget. So I can't remember exactly which projects we put that towards in 2022 right now, but the 5% just goes into the general fund for operations.
Okay.
Specific, right? It's a transfer in to the general fund.
And we do bring that forward to council normally the meeting after our general fund budget as a separate budget, or shortly thereafter, if not the meeting after. Isn't that right?
Yes. So, and I think Councilmember Parker, we probably put that towards the Market Street streetscape project for the capital project side, if I remember right. Any other questions on that?
We're good.
Okay. Tourism ticket fees, we're projecting around 375,000. That covers about half of the expenditures for our tourism division. So that's a direct transfer into the general fund. Councilmember Parker, for those expenses. Hospitality, this I wanted to talk about. I talked with ad hoc about this. We'd like to change the way that we determine the amount that we transfer into the general fund. We typically try to estimate the exact costs that we have that are tourism related, and it's really kind of hard to do that. Departments forget to code things right, and it's hard with our current system to really track the costs. And I think that we're missing a lot of our tourism related costs, and that we could obviously transfer more into the general fund. And I think y'all know we're in the process of getting a new ERP system, which hopefully will be more helpful in that. But for right now, I just don't think we're capturing the true burden and cost of the city for being a tourist destination. And I think we can do a better job of that. So we developed a calculation that we think is reasonable in terms of determining how much we could transfer into the general fund from hospitality fees. And if you look at the number of average daily visitors a city invites on a daily basis, it's about 19,800 people, which is a significant amount of people that the city hosts and provides services to. And based on that calculation, we would be able to transfer in an amount equal to 12.65% of our budgeted eligible general fund expenditures to help cover the cost So that's where we kind of came up with that. You see that calculation on the side of how we came up with the 12.65%. Any questions on that? I'm sorry, my ad hoc committee members too, that you're having to sit through all of this again. So we looked at the general fund expenditures base budget is $218 million. 12.65% of that amount would be about $28 million. We went through every single one of our departments and looked at specific expenditures and took 12.65% of those expenditures that we feel are directly related to tourism. And we came up with $23 million that we could actually transfer from hospitality fee fund. But our revenues were only projecting 23.5 million. So obviously we wouldn't want to transfer all of that. And we have previous commitments, you all know, that utilize hospitality fees. So we wouldn't be able to transfer in that full amount because we have recurring commitments with like the Gilliard, Charleston, the tennis center on Daniel Island, all of those. And also some capital projects that we need to finish up as well. So we came up with $11 million that is available to transfer into the general fund. We typically transfer in about 5 million or so. So this would be $6 additional million into the general fund that could help with some of our expenses. Does anybody have any questions on that?
Councilmember Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Amy, just give me an example of what would an expense be that you would want to use, adding this to the general fund? Give me an example of what you've used the hospitality fees for.
It could be anything really, when police respond to certain things, it's every single one of our departments, tourism, a lot of their things that they're doing, fire department, when they're responding to certain things downtown or even anywhere like tourist related, all of that could be covered more with hospitality fee funds. So that's what we did. We went through every single department and looked at what we thought could be covered. Like my department would be zero because I'm just me. So
Okay.
we wouldn't take anything for us HR, like those types of departments, but the ones that are actually out there, parks, doing work in the field, all of that, some of that is directly related to our tourist destination.
Okay. Understood. It has to be tourist. These hospitality funds going to the general fund have to be used for tourist.
What we feel, yes, are direct costs of us being a tourist destination. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
But I would add that this approach is a little broader than we've done in the past, which I commend Amy and the team for taking this broad approach, which allows us to, in essence, capture more of the hospitality funding for our everyday services that we provide. And you think about it, if you got 20,000 visitors on average every day, they're putting trash in our trash cans. They're having some emergency medical thing that the fire department has to respond to. They're having some issue perhaps where they need police assistance. The list could go on. And so, that's been one of the challenges in the past is coming up with a way that rationalizes what happens in reality is that all of our departments do incur some expense because of the hospitality and the visitor industry that we enjoy on one side and have to respond to and provide services for on the other side. So sorry to carry on, but all by way of saying kudos to our budget and finance folks for coming up with this.
Any other questions? Okay, so we're developing a financial policy that we'll be bringing to City Council regarding this in the very near future. And then expenditures, this is current estimate without the additional requests from the departments. So base budget includes everything from the department's 2022 budget, excluding one-time expenditures or initiatives. Includes contract prices for increases for contracted services, current draft budget includes $222.7 million in expenditures from the general fund and 32.4 in enterprise funds. And it does not include additional requests. So this is kind of where we are. In comparison to 2022's approved budget, the largest change is in non-departmental. You'll see right here, which that's ARPA funds. So we won't receive any ARPA funds in 2023. So that's why that looks like such a big drop. Next is police and fire, which mostly it's just their pay plan. It's a pay plan adjustment we did last year, plus their steps that they get. And then public service is the same, plus the increase in contracted services because we had the new contracts for the contracted service areas for public service. And then for every other department, pretty much that increase that you see is because of the pay plan adjustment we did last year. Non-sworn got 7.7% and non-classified and sworn got a 4.5% increase, just to remind you.
And I would just point out, Amy, that so not to confuse folks, even though we will not receive any new ARPA funds in 2023. We hadn't allocated all the funds that we've received to date. So you'll see later in her presentation some items that are being paid for with ARPA funds, but the money was received in a prior year. That sound right?
That's right.
Councilmember Parker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you just tell me again, give me an example, public service, the department, public service?
That's environmental services. It's a trash collection, garbage collection, streets and sidewalks, street sweeping. That's public service.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other, I mean, what's the department other?
It just includes things that are department related. That's like, I don't know. I can't even tell you that right now. Councilmember Parker, honestly. I'll have to get back to you on that one.
Amy?
It's a debt payments, isn't it? Is it all the debt? It's debt. I'm sorry. I just had to think about that for a second. Sorry. Not got much sleep the last couple of days. So it's debt. Any other questions? I was going to say, Councilmember Bowden, if you probably would help your baby go to sleep listening to this whole thing. If you needed some help, you could probably do that.
I needed to see him for just a second today. Before he goes back to sleep.
Okay, so current draft budget, we're at a $15.9 million surplus. But that's just revenues exceeding expenditures right now without considering anything. This is just base budget. Okay, so additional requests from the department they were $21 million. General fund was 19.3, enterprise was 1.68. Of those requests, we considered 1.5 of them mandatory or life safety items, and 1.3 was from the general fund, and 170 was in the enterprise funds. So of the $21 million in additional requests, we actually went through and we're recommending about 12.2 of that be funded. And with the 1.5 of the mandatory life safety, which usually we just try to automatically fund, the total amount we were recommending to be funded is $13.7 million. And of that amount, 3.6 can be covered with other funding sources such as tourism funds, general fund reserves, parking reserves. Any questions? So now we're talking about the pay plan. And I know a lot of you were on the HR committee meeting and joint ad hoc meeting, so you know a lot of this, but I'm going to go through it for those that have not seen this. So right now, as of September, the cost of living is 8.7%. That's the consumer price index for our area, for the Southeast region. So we're recommending a 9% COLA for all employees. that would increase our minimum wage to $16.35. Our minimum wage right now is $15 an hour. Any questions?
And Ms.
Council members Gregory and then Sachin.
Amy, for council members, didn't we tie increases for council members to the COLA as well?
Yes, I'm pretty sure that's tied to, yes, we did that last year.
Okay, thank you.
Council member Sachin.
When you say all employees, Amy, is that some are part-time,
It's
seasonal
everybody.
and hourly employees with like recreation as well?
It's everybody.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And then in addition to that, we had some HR committee meetings and went through kind of comparisons of where we are versus other cities in the Southeast region. So we're actually recommending, because we did note that there were some changes that we needed to make, some adjustments we needed to make to all of the 3 pay plans. And when I say that, I mean police, fire, and non-sworn. In that we were talking about where we would be and trying to get ourselves to the 25th percentile amongst that Southeast region, but that included cities like Charlotte, Atlanta, and Raleigh. So we wanted to focus more just on the state of South Carolina and trying to be the #1 paid municipality in the state of South Carolina. So that's where we focused. So right now, our current rankings compared to other cities in South Carolina and PSDs as well. Police department is #1 paid, fire department is the #2 paid, and we non-sworn are 12th for pay. And we're pretty much behind. We're behind PSD, Mount Pleasant, and North Charleston, and the school district and the housing authority, who are our direct competitors for jobs.
and Ms.
Council member Parker and then Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just quickly, and maybe they just didn't make the rankings, but I am curious, the town of James Island, is that?
I don't know that they replied to our request for information, Councilmember Parker. I'd have to double check with HR on that one. They just might not have participated in our query.
Or the PSD. Okay, I was just curious if they just didn't make the rankings or if, okay, thank you.
No, I think it's probably more just we didn't get any information from them when we asked for information.
And they don't have a police or fire department.
Right. Council member Waring.
The PSD does. We have PSD fire over here.
Right, they just don't have police, that's right. So does St. Andrews, also has a fire department. Anyway,
Council member Waring. You're on mute, council member.
Thank you.
There you go.
Amy, is this after the pay raise? or
so this is current rankings as we are right now. Yep.
Man, you had me with an empty pit.
Council member Gregory.
Sorry.
There you go. All right.
Okay.
We're good.
So we looked at several different options and we landed here, increasing the sworn pay plans by 3% and the non-sworn pay plan by 4.33%. That would be a total increase of 12% for both police and fire and 13.33% for non-sworn. The cost of that is $16.5 million, but that would get us at a $17 an hour minimum wage. Any
And
questions on that?
Councilmember Saccharin.
Thank you, Mayor. I did get an email from a constituent a couple days ago whose husband is a police officer. So all police officers will get a 12% increase or up to 12%?
No, 12%.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. If this is approved, yes.
Assuming we approve a budget that includes this recommendation, right?
Any questions?
Next.
So now Councilmember Waring, this is your chart. So police and fire will still rank one and two, but that would put non-sworn at number 3 in ranking in the state of South Carolina.
And understand this is all based on our latest information. And if one of these other jurisdictions made some change a month ago and we don't know it, the ranking could change a little bit. But, this is our own analysis based on the best information we have at this time.
Right. And remember too, it's the average starting pay for all grades and ranks too.
Right.
So, and looking at that, police is the #1 ranking department. And again, like we said, this information we received in April, so it might be a little bit outdated, but obviously we didn't have time to do a whole new salary comparison study sort of thing in order for this budget information. But the closest competitor behind our police department would be the city of Greenville, and they would have to give their police officers a 19% pay increase in order to catch up to us, for us to fall to number 2. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Fire is the second highest paid. They're behind the city of Greenville, and they're 7% away from being number 1. The third highest paid is St. Andrews PSD, and they're 13% behind our average starting pay. So they would have to give their firefighters a 13% increase for us to fall into 3rd place. Good. And then non-sworn, we're number 3 behind the town of Hilton Head and the city of Myrtle Beach. We're 29% away from what Hilton Head is paying and 6% away from what Myrtle Beach is paying. Next highest ranked competitor is St. Andrews PSD, and we're only 1% away from them. So there would be a threat of us falling into 4th place, and they'd only need to give a 1% increase in order to tie us. And we're 2% away from Charleston Water System, 4% away from Mount Pleasant, and 5% away from North Charleston.
So generally speaking, on the non-sworn rates, we're closer to many other jurisdictions than on the sworn positions.
Any questions on that? It's kind of method to our madness and where we came up with our percentages, and plus trying to focus on that minimum wage as well. So just an aggregate average earnings, just to kind of show with our current pay plan versus the proposed adjustments. The dotted lines are the current pay plan and the solid lines are the proposed. So you can see where everybody salaries increase over time, over the next 5 years. Any questions on that? You can see
Councilmember Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Amy, on your last slide, I am curious on non-sworn, do we have a CDL license or these special, obviously we have a lot of non-sworn that require certain licenses to operate the equipment. Any information there?
What's your question exactly about that? Because we have CDL drivers, but
well, okay, for example, 2% away from CWS, 4% away from Mount Pleasant, 5% away from North Charleston. And obviously these are probably our biggest competitors as far as environmental services go, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So I am just curious, pay-wise, what this increase will do to those particular license,
so that's one of the other issues that we have, because recognizing that even though we do this, we could have some pay grades that still they're a little bit out of whack. So we'll have to see if this gets approved. Sorry, my light goes off because I sit too still. Sorry. So we could have areas that we still need to work on, but we have to see if this gets approved, where that will put those specific positions. And then what we're also recommending, which is on this next slide, is that we get a comprehensive pay study done to look at every single pay grade, every single rank, look at all free pay plans and get that kind of all shored up and make sure that we're paying everybody where we need to pay them.
Okay,
That
perfect.
answer your question?
It does, because I just
Okay.
wanted to make sure that that 2% doesn't always, it's a broad 2%. It doesn't mean that we're 2% away from, what
Right.
WS
That's right.
CDL driver or North Charleston does. Okay, I just wanted to.
That's right. We could still have some issues in some pay grades for sure. So we want to make sure we look at all of that.
And quickly, just so this pay plan, I know I was kind of on that meeting, but this pay plan study that y'all had proposed, do you know what the cost of that would be yet?
I don't, we need to do some research and get an RFP out. Okay. Any other questions on that? Does that all make sense? And then I just as a comparison to our neighboring jurisdictions, since this would get us to $17 an hour, North Charleston's at $16.35 for full-time, $15 for part-time. Mount Pleasant's at $17.27, but they're on a 37.5-hour work week. So that inflates their hourly rate just a little bit, just to give you an idea where we are, because they're also on a July to June fiscal year. So in July, they could give another pay raise that would make us a little behind again, just so you know.
So Amy, on the proposed pay plan study, did we allocate some 2023 dollars for that, or you were planning on using 2022 reserves or some other source to pay for that?
We have some unallocated general fund reserves, Mayor, that we could utilize for that.
Yeah.
And also because if we're talking about too, for the police department having their facility study and all that with the IPRB leftover funds, so we can do that with that. And talking with Jeremy, there could be some bond funds that we could also utilize for the general fund sort of review as well. So I'm looking at different options for that.
Right.
But we wouldn't need to budget something into 2023 because I think there's funding available.
Great. So I wanted to share that with council to make them aware that we don't want to wait until 23 to go ahead and start the procurement to get this study done. We might not come to a contract or whatever until early next year, but we're going to go ahead and start working on it. Because as Councilmember Parker pointed out, I mean, most of these comparisons are just starting pay. And in fact, relatively, we may vary in our ranking when it comes to a CDL driver or some other, more professional position. And we want to really drill down and see how we compare on all the positions up and down the board with this more detailed study and lead to a more formal pay plan for our non-sworn employees, similar to what police and fire have, where they get incentives for education, training, and other requirements that allow them to earn more over time being our employees. All right.
So ARPA funds, Mayor had mentioned this earlier. Right now, we have about $6.6 million that we have not allocated. If y'all remember, we did allocate about 3.7 for the tax increase in 2021, but we didn't have to utilize that those funds. So we have those available. And then we also gave all the employees a bonus in 2022. If you remember, we brought that back in August or September, I can't remember. And that was 3.4 million. And with our salary savings, what they are right now, we won't have to utilize ARPA funds for that either. So we freed up those funds as well. So we have $6.6 million right now available. So we had we're recommending about 2.7 million for one-time expenditures for the departments had requested in the 2023 budget to help with fund some of those requests that they had asked for. But we also need to allocate funding for the Hope Center and the James E. Lewis Entrepreneurial Resource Center. And if we do use the 2.7 for the 2023 budget, we'd have about 3.8 million left over. unallocated. Any questions on that?
Councilmember Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What kind of items can be used for the ARPA funds?
It's just one-time expenditures. So there's some equipment and things like that that departments have asked for that we could utilize those funds for. There's some studies and planning to continue their comprehensive plan, things like that, that we used ARPA funds for last year. We could use those ARPA funds for that again this year. Or I'm sorry, I'm working 3 years normally, but next year for 2023, those types of things. It's just one-time expenditures, nothing that would have an ongoing cost.
So, but anything, I say one-time expenditures, so you said equipment, any small projects or land, or what, I mean, what category does it fall in?
It's really just, so small projects aren't necessarily asked for in this budget, Councilmember Parker, so that's usually elsewhere, so not really small projects, but like I said, studies and equipment, things like that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so bottom line, is it a surplus or a deficit? So if we, like I said, we had a $15.9 million surplus, if you will, from the base budget, just where we are right now. We add the offsetting funding resources that I said that we had for general fund reserves and things like that. That's 3.6, and the ARPA funding of 2.7. We would have $22.3 million available. If we funded the 13.7 in the recommended requests and then the pay plan, we'd be $7.8 million out. We would need additional $7.8 million to balance the budget. Any questions on that?
Councilmember Parker.
Thank you. I'm just going to ask it. So can ARPA funds be used for this?
The ARPA funds that can be used are in this number here, the
Oh, I'm
$2.7 million. Yes,
I missed that. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Right.
Any other questions? So our next steps to balance, oh, I'm sorry.
Councilmember Shade.
Yeah, Amy, earlier on in one of the slides regarding the recommended request of the 13.7 million,
Mhm.
of that 13.7, 1.3 million was, I think you classified as life savings or whatever that term was. So how was the balance of that $12 million spread out for recommended request increases? Is it spread out over just one particular department, or is it spread out evenly over several departments? Do you have
It's over all of our departments, every single one.
do you have a breakdown on how that spread out, that extra 12 million?
I
Anywhere?
do.
Is that in one of our slides?
It's not, I didn't, then I would have had probably 90 slides, Councilmember Shade. Some of it's what we talked about yesterday in ad hoc.
Right, right.
But don't we have that already? I mean, you sent that to us, what, early in the week? I mean, it's.
Ad hoc should have it. We're happy to share it
Yeah.
with all
What
of
we
Councilmember.
could do is do a summary of those items and send them out. We can do that.
I think that would be, for my purposes, that'd be helpful as to the $12 million plus or minus as to that those increases.
Or
Okay.
what I could probably do is just send everybody the ad hoc slides from yesterday. That might be the easiest thing for me to do.
It's
Okay.
a summary, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean,
I'll just send everybody out the ad hoc PowerPoint from yesterday.
Because we do have that information already.
Mhm.
Right, and
That work, Councilmember Shade?
I think there was about a
Yeah, that would
24
work. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
there was about a 24-page spreadsheet that listed everything.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And I was just asking for a summary for
yeah.
the rest of the.
I'll send yesterday's slides. Just remember that, Councilmember Waring will really, really like this. Some of the numbers have changed a little bit because we got confirmation from Charleston Water Systems for the additional amount that we will receive from them in 2023. So those numbers are in there. So the numbers have changed just a little bit because of that. So if you're comparing, that's the differences.
Yeah, and we did go over that yesterday. I think for the
Mhm.
benefit of the other council members, it'd be helpful for them to understand the $12 million that are not life-threatening, life-saving type issues. Because I know where we're going with the next slide. So that's sort of important to know about that $12 million. Okay.
And those slides have detailed out the mandatory life safety items. They're actually detailed out, so you will have that.
Councilmember Parker?
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Councilmember Shade. Yes, this is something that I've asked for multiple times. So I would really, really like to see the departmental requests. So I'd appreciate you sharing them. Thank you.
All right. So if I may just put this in perspective a little bit, you know, it seems like every year we end up with a number like this that we need to balance. And one comment I'll make, it could be so much worse, but for the great efforts, as I mentioned already, by Amy and the team to include and dig out the 2.7 million in ARPA funding that we can apply, the almost $6 million in extra hospitality funds that they were able to transfer to the general fund because of their new analysis of in-depth analysis of all the things that apply, and also the increase in our enterprise funds. So add ARPA, hospitality, and enterprise funding, and this number could have been $10 million worse, so to speak, than it is. So just for perspective, I thought I'd share that.
Okay. So next steps. We will begin coming through all of the requests to reduce the amount that we're recommending, reprioritize our recommendations based on how high of a priority the request was from the departments. Requests that have revenue or other funding sources tied to them will be of higher priority. And we may have to separate out some of those requests and recommend only a portion of them based on the funding sources. And then we'll have to look at, with our current recruitment and retention issues, some of the positions that we were recommending, and just look through all of that. Pay plan adjustment, like I said, this for us, this is an absolute last resort, but if the decision was to reduce the pay plan, this is how much each would reduce. So if you're looking at the COLA, which is for the whole entire city, 1% reduction would yield 1.3 million, and 1% to police pay plan yields 368,000 in savings, fire 301, and non-sworn would be 657,000.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Gregory.
I really think that we should hold any pay plan adjustments harmless so that we can keep the 13 and 12. Just my recommendation would be to do that. If we're going to do any adjustments, do the adjustments in other expenditures and leave the pay plan adjustments alone.
That was my recommendation yesterday as well. Yes, sir, I concur.
So for revenue, we're pretty confident in our numbers, and like you said, we're being conservative. We're going to look at business license again. That might be one area that we can increase a little bit. And then yesterday when we were talking, there was no decision on increasing taxes. The committee wanted to talk about that further with full council. So that will lead me into my next slides, unless anybody has any other questions. Okay. So property taxes, including local option sales tax. This is kind of where we're focusing. So budget can, like I said, considers no property tax increase as it is right now. Value of 1 mil is 1.7. So 1 mil obviously would generate 1.7 million, 2 would be 3.4, and 3 mils would generate 5.1 million. Our millage bank right now is 6.85%, and that equates to 5.2 mils. Any questions on that? Okay.
Councilmember Parker?
Thank you. Can you Oh, maybe it's coming in the next slide. Can you just give me an idea on, a $400,000 house, what that equates to?
Yes.
Thank
It's
you.
a few slides away
Okay.
from Parker, but we have that. Just so you know, so we increased property taxes by 3 mils in 2022. When we set the millage and local option sales tax credit factor in 2022, because of the strength of the local option sales tax, we had to set the tax credit factor higher. So our net millage actually decreased from 2021 to 2022, even though we had a tax increase. So I have a little slide on how our net millage, but went from 61, our net millage went from 61.3 to 60.8 mils. And then just keep in mind, if a recession, local option sales tax can't stay this strong forever. So just keep that in mind. But this is our local option sales tax, what the effect is on our millage. So the top line is our gross millage. That's basically what we set. And then we give 100% of local option sales tax back. So that reduces our millage to 60.8. So our real millage is, our gross millage is 84.3, but what everybody feels on their tax bill is actually a 60.8 mil effect. Questions on this? Comments?
Councilmember Rappel.
So, Amy, I'm going to ask some leading questions here, just for the purposes of everybody on the call. So based on this graph, it would be accurate to say that property taxes are less now today than they were in 2009. Isn't that correct?
That is correct.
No further questions.
Councilmember Shade.
That was a weak leading question there, Councilman Rappel. We're going to give you a D+ on that.
Hey, he acknowledged it up front.
She's a friendly witness. She's a friendly witness. I'm not trying to beat her up.
He's very transparent.
Amy,
Yes.
following that lead from our esteemed counselor, Councilmember Rappel, if we, so I know we were heading with this on the LOST refund. If this is all based on a 100% refund from LOST.
Yes.
Okay. And so, and we've gone over this slide 1,000 times, and those of us who've been on the ad hoc committee have seen this numerous occasions. So because of our increase in sales tax revenue, our taxes are actually lower over time, even with a 3 mil increase. If we don't give 100% of the refund back to our property owners, then the theory would be that the millage would increase. It would not be at 60.8.
Right. Your net millage would be a little higher.
So our net millage would be a little higher. And that means your taxes would be a little higher as well.
That's right.
So by not giving back 100% of our LOST dollars, you lose that 100% of whatever that refund may be in dollars, and your tax bill goes up by some percentage number as well.
Right. I have some slides to kind of show a couple different scenarios later, Councilmember Shade, that will show the tax increase.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any questions on this?
But
I know yesterday. Oh, I'm sorry.
I just point out that is assuming you have sales taxes collected, to cover those credits, so to speak. I mean, ultimately, the LOST is driven by the amount of sales tax that's collected within the city limits of Charleston. And if that grows or goes down, it does impact what that credit will be as well. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Councilmember Gregory, are you hand up again, or forgot to take it down? There you go. All right, next slide.
Okay, so yesterday, ad hoc had asked for some comparisons, so we have comparisons. So we have North Charleston and Mount Pleasant. Mount Pleasant is in orange, yellow is North Charleston, and Charleston is blue. So the solid lines are the gross millage, the dotted lines are the net millage. So you can see where we are in comparison to Mount Pleasant and North Charleston. Does that make sense? Is everybody following that okay? So we're here, 84.3. Our net millage is 60.8. North Charleston's millage is 95 and 74.25. So we're below North Charleston in both categories, gross and net millage. And then Mount Pleasant's is just really low. I don't think they provide the number of services that we do.
They do also have impact fees that were put in place a long time ago before impact fee legislation changed and made it more difficult for us to implement. So they do collect a good bit of money from that fee that we don't have.
And then Councilmember, well, I have one for PSD's Councilmember Waring coming up. So this is what the tax credit factor does to gross millage. So in blue is us. So that 23.5, that's the actual number of mills that it reduces our gross millage. So that's the savings, millage savings right there. It has 23.5 mills. Does that make sense? Okay.
So if I could share with everyone at this chart as an observation, North Charleston brags on the fact that they are the sales tax, retail sales leader in the state of South Carolina. They collect more sales tax in their jurisdiction than any other city. But you see that their tax credit reduction of millage is less than ours, even though they're collecting more sales tax. And the reason for that is, in fact, they utilize, I'm told, all of their allowable local option sales tax to help fund their city government. And in fact, Mount Pleasant uses a portion of their local option sales tax to fund their city operations. So in both cases of North Charleston and Mount Pleasant, and in both cases, we've had difficulty keeping up with them in terms of employee compensation. They both utilize this revenue source that we do not. And honestly, I think that has made a difference over time, that has given them a little more flexibility in their funding sources and streams to be able to be more competitive on employee compensation. And it's part of what got us to where we are today. But I just wanted to point out that these are two examples of local jurisdictions that do utilize some or all of their local option sales tax, as allowed by state law, and in a way, in terms of funding sources, has put them a bit at a competitive advantage. Councilmember Shade?
And Mayor, that's an important question for all of us, because the town of North Charleston and the city of North Charleston, town of Mount Pleasant, as you pointed out, uses all or a portion of that LOST money, which they don't give their taxpayers, property owners, 100% of the refund. And because of that, look at the comparison that the full refund gives to our taxpayers. Our taxpayers get a millage credit of 23.5.
Right.
Versus 20.75 for North Charleston and 11.25 for the town of Mount Pleasant. And to your point earlier that you made, and I heard the same bragging that North Charleston would make, is that they receive the highest level of sales tax in the state. So even with their high revenue amount of sales tax, their tax credit factor shown on this graph is still almost three full mills less than ours. And part of that is because they don't give their taxpayers, property owners, 100% of their refund.
That's right. That's right. Shop in Charleston, everyone. All right. Councilmember Appel.
And just real quickly, I mean, would anybody on this call say that North Charleston is not a business-friendly city and a business-friendly jurisdiction? They are. And so I think this is a data point that suggests that rolling back a bit of the loss credit, taking some of that money that's already on the table, is not going to be this sort of insurmountable barrier to business development. I mean, you got to tip your hat to the city of North Charleston. They are open for business. It's easy to open and start businesses up there. So I think it's unique and eye-opening to see that our neighbor to the north is pocketing 100% of the loss credit, and they have substantially higher property taxes than us. So just something worth noting as we continue to talk about this.
Right, absolutely. Councilmember Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Amy, I hate to get you to go all the way back to that that slide that shows the salaries, North Charleston, Mount Pleasant, all of us. The reason I say that, when you look at the groupings, after our pay raise, it wasn't North Charleston in front of us. It was Myrtle Beach and Hilton Head. And one of the higher, believe it or not, one of the higher compensating entities was St. Andrews PSD. And they don't even get lost revenue. So, no, go, the one where you had the ranks of the cities, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Okay. So if you look at non-swarm, the city of North Charleston is 7, and they're actually using some of the lost revenue and have higher property taxes.
Let me go to current, Councilmember Waring. Probably need to be on the current one for you to compare. Yeah.
All right.
But it's after our proposed increase for employee compensation, and we still got to pay for it. That's, I guess, my point.
I agree with you, but again, this is before any pay adjustment.
Yeah.
And from the police standpoint, it's not North Charleston. It's the city of Charleston. From the fire standpoint, it's not North Charleston. As a matter of fact, St. Andrews PSD is in front of North Charleston.
Right.
And then obviously, we all know that we've been behind with our non-sworn. And that's why I think I would be shocked if the pay raises for our non-sworn, actually everybody doesn't go through. So when you look at this chart before we do everything, look at non-sworn and St. Andrews PSD. They don't have lost revenue. They don't even get it. Okay. It's not North Charleston. So I respectfully disagree that because of their utilization of of lost revenue, that they have surpassed us in compensating our employees. Non-sworn, you get no argument out of me on that. But the two largest parts of our budget is police and fire. And they woefully behind in that. So anyway.
I hear you. And and as I said, it can be a moving target. I mean, even these rankings were based on the information we had 4 months ago. So, we're all going to change a bit over time. We're trying to get competitive. I don't think we have been as competitive as we need to be.
I agree. I agree. We should have been concentrating on it a little sooner. But anyway, we're getting there. And if you go back to how they use their ARPA funds, if you go back to their ARPA funds, which was like around March or around April or May of this year, they did a big pay raise based on ARPA funds, which was not lost revenue. So,
right.
The better deal is still the city of Charleston, and because all that we offer as a city in the way of services, people still pay less.
Amen. I agree completely.
Thank you.
Amy, you want to go on through the, a couple of scenarios? And y'all, I know we've, talked about this millage versus LOST, and I'll admit to you, in a way, it's two sides of the same coin, you know what I mean? But let's just explore what it would take for us to get there, so to speak, to cover this proposed compensation package that I think we all want to do, and just assuming that we're going to keep most of the recommended other spending that Amy and everyone has spent so much time going through the departmental budgets. That's not to say between now and the time we approve a budget, we can't dissect that and go line by line, Councilmember Shade, on those 24 pages and decide something you want to keep or not keep. But that's part of the discussion. At this point, we need to make an assumption and try to figure out how to pay for the differential regardless. Amy?
Okay, I just had this slide for Councilmember Waring, but we can come back to it.
No, I do want to see that because
Okay.
I think there is a LOST impact, Councilmember Waring, on the PSD millage rate, but it comes from the county, not from, obviously, from the PSD itself. But they do get a LOST credit for being in Charleston County. Isn't that right, Amy? Isn't that what this is showing?
I think
It doesn't affect our millage at all, Mayor.
Okay.
So, yeah, so this is what it looks like, Councilmember. We talked about this yesterday in ad hoc, just so you can see. We've got the dotted line for net millage because we get that tax credit factor
right.
deduction, and then but that's where St. Andrews is.
So if you look at St. Andrews, 93.7.
Yep.
The city of North Charleston was at 9.5. And look at what all North Charleston provides. I mean, they got a Coliseum, they got a Performing Arts Center, they got a big police force. Obviously, they got waterfront parks. I mean, obviously, a lot sounds like us too. PSD has fire and trash. And I think they do some street lighting. And look at the millage cost. I mean, their millage is 50% higher. Their net, and that's their net, isn't it, Amy?
Well,
Their
'cause
net-
that's their gross millage.
in other words,
Yeah.
what their millage is what it is.
Mhm.
It's not reduced
right.
by anything. So they almost 33 mils higher than so 32.9 mils higher than the net 60.8 for the city of Charleston. It's not even close. And you know what? If you went online today and tried to find their budget, I'll buy you dinner. You can't find it. Talk about lack of transparency. People don't know what they're paying. People don't know they're paying, as far as property taxes, on the net millage standpoint, they're paying over 50% more in St. Andrews PSD. And I can't talk about, I don't know about James Allen PSD, and even James Allen PSD, they do more. They obviously provides, they provide sewage. So we pick up the costs and we pay them more money from our taxpayers. So we pay them over 50% more than we collect for a 7-year period. And we pick up the cost. That's crazy. I mean, that is absolutely crazy. You talk about affecting the cash flow on permanent dollars. Millage is the most dependable stream of revenue that the city, any municipality gets, not just the city of Charleston. I'm proud of, and we all are, of our diverse stream. Accommodations, hospitality, business license fees, parking fees. But we saw what happened during that pandemic. Those revenues plummeted. But where was the millage? The millage was in there just like a rock of Gibraltar. Okay. So, and you know one thing about millage? It is the most transparent form of taxation. Everybody knows it up front. Okay, and we know what it's for. Police, fire, trash, sanitation, recreation. If you can't do those basic services, we need to leave and give somebody else a chance.
All right,
Thank
Councilmember.
you.
Thank you. Councilmember Saccharin.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just going to keep listening, but I feel like, seeing as though I won't be back next year, I do think it's okay for me to say some of these things because it's been on my mind for the past 3 years. I didn't know, Adam and top and bottom when I first started with this, and didn't know what was going on. So the past 3 years have been pretty eye-opening in terms of, our budget. We sit month after month, meeting after meeting, talking about lack of services, whether it's our drainage, whether it's our trash, whether it's our parks and rec. And then here we are again, talking about whether we're going to raise taxes and how we're going to get there. I feel like part of the challenge, Mayor and fellow council members, is the public generally does not know this information. When you ask the average citizen if their taxes are high, they're associating that with some sort of talking point that they're hearing from the national media and really not thinking about what their taxes are like. So when you add lost into this, there is no sense that that money's coming back to them. And I think the city of North Charleston, rightfully so, to Ross's point, good for them. They recognize that folks are probably not going to even know that they weren't getting lost back or credited. So they just use that as a revenue source. So I guess the point I'm making is it'd be nice if we could share this information with the public as best as possible, because I think generally folks don't get it. We've got champagne taste and a beer budget. We want all these services, but we're not willing to pay for it. So I'll tell my constituents that as I head out the door and do anything I can to make sure that folks realize this. But we've got some serious revenue challenges ahead of us and some serious discussions that we have to have about making sure that we've got the best and brightest at our city, not just in public service and trash, but there at your workplace, Mayor and Rick and everyone else. Like, we've got to make sure we're competitive, and it's not just our trash and public service, but it's all across the board. So the point I'm making is I feel like we need to have an honest conversation with the general public and let them know that we've been skating by for years on a budget that really is just, to me, if I'm running a business like this, I would be very scared, because eventually, and we're seeing it this year, people are calling us about their trash service and whatever else. It's coming to fruition. Like, they're not getting the services they need because we're running the city in a way that it's so close to like disaster. I don't want to say it that way, but so close to like any potential downturn, we're going to see it. And all I'm saying is, I just don't know how you sustain this over the next 5, 10, 15 years if we're going to do the work that we need to get done.
Right. And maybe I would suggest on the margin, maybe, rather than close to disaster.
Yeah, I don't mean that, but it's just so close to it
So
doesn't make sense to me.
if I may, in response, just in behalf of North Charleston, they're following state law, and the citizens there are getting approximately 70 cent on the dollar back from that sales tax that they're collecting. So they're seeing a nice credit, but they're just utilizing the portion that state law allows them to utilize for city funding, just like we take 5% off the top on accommodations. The state allows that, we take it. So the city of North Charleston is just following state law. Their citizens are also getting a healthy loss credit, because they're number one retail leader in the state. But it's all this portion, nearly 70% that the state mandates gets returned, if that makes sense. So I know I got Councilmember Gregory again and Councilmember Appel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm for not using local options sales tax, but I'd like to respond to Councilmember Saccharin in all due respect.
Right.
I've never experienced our city being in a posture of disaster with respect to our budget. I think when we make a determination with regard to services in particular, we need to look a little beyond our budget per se. It wasn't that we didn't have the funds, okay, in order to deal with the services, et cetera, because we did. The issue was not having the kind of staff level, okay, necessary to carry out all of those. And sorry for the phone, guys, that's the other phone. We just didn't have the staffing. Now, I think a part of this budget, hopefully, given the kinds of pay adjustments that we are about to make, will make a difference in services. We were just not competitive. So we've had an unbelievable level of vacancies. And as a result of those vacancies, yes, we've had some serious issues with services. So hopefully, with the kinds of things that we're going to do with this budget, making our jobs a little more attractive, making all of our people have a living wage. I'm hoping that would make a difference, but I've never, ever felt in our 14 years that we were at a point of disaster. And I'd hate for the media to pick up on anything like that.
Thank you. Councilmember Appel, and then back to Saccharin.
It's okay. I don't think anyone watches these meetings other than us.
Surprise.
But Mayor, you have just hit on such an important point that I'm going to echo for everybody's benefit here. And Amy, please jump all over me if I get this wrong. The citizens of Charleston will get a loss credit even if we max out the amount we're allowed to take as required by law. Okay, so this is not a question of the city of Charleston takes all the legally available money on the table and the taxpayers get no tax relief from sales tax generated. We're just playing at that margin of the percentage that's in play. The vast majority of the money represented by the loss credit goes to the taxpayers no matter what we do. So when you're looking at this screen and you look at that, $18 million figure on the far left-hand side, and then you zoom all the way over to the other side on the right and see that $10 million figure, even in the max out scenario, that differential is what we're talking about here. So I just think that's a very important point as we start talking about the loss credit and what we do with it. The citizens of Charleston are going to be the beneficiary of tax relief through the sales tax that's generated in the city, regardless of what we do. We're just talking about the magnitude. Right now, it's at a total maxed out level. The question is about here to here, not here to here. And I just wanted to echo that because I think that's a very important point.
Right. Thank you. Back to Councilmember Saccharin and then Shade.
Thank you, Mayor. And I just wanted to respond to Council Member Gregory. I guess my word choice was not the best. I understand the city's not in a disaster mode, but I guess the way I would better categorize that is if you ask Councilman Parker, if some of her constituents are about to pull their hair out about some of the issues that they're having, or some of my constituents regarding some of the trash and public service issues. Say if you ask them, are you at wit's end with some of these concerns? They would say yes. So my point is, as Councilman Gregory, we may have had the money, but I would argue that we didn't, because our number one expense is people. So if we're not paying people appropriately and allocating the investments we need for our folks, wouldn't that create and exacerbate the problem that we're having currently when we've got huge deltas between the staffing needs and what we have on staff? I feel like for me, that's what I've seen in my past 3 years here is just, if we're not competitive and we can't get people in the door, then that directly has a direct negative consequence on the services that we're providing our citizens. That's all I was saying. I wasn't we're teetering on disaster. But I will say, if you're concerned, like Councilwoman Parker's and some of my folks, and you ask them, are you feeling your basic services are being met right now? I think the answer is emphatically no.
Thank you. And that's the point of this budget, is to adjust employee compensation to be more competitive in this turned upside down labor market, number one. I do want to remind everyone, just in light of this conversation, that the city of Charleston has enjoyed a AAA credit rating for many years. And if you recall, our audit report just a few months ago was just glowing, and our reserves put aside for a rainy day are higher than they've ever been in the city's history. So financially, we were super strong. That says a lot about Amy and the team's management. But year to year, we do struggle with the different funding sources and how much we have and how we're allocating them. And I think we're all on accord that we need to allocate more to look after our employees first and make sure we're compensating them in a fair way and a competitive way, so that we can maintain our staffing and maintain our services. Shade, Waring, and Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Sackett, I think that your point that you're trying to make, I would agree with. That is, our constituents, our citizens are not getting the full bang for their buck that they expect to receive for basic services. So that's just reality. And you can go around the city and see the debris still lingering around in parts of West Ashley. I'm getting calls regularly and emails from folks who are upset about us not providing adequate trash pickup and debris pickup. So your point is well taken, but the mayor's point also is well taken, is that we are healthy financially. And to say something to the contrary is somewhat, we're gonna be careful with that kind of comments. But I do want to echo your sentiments on that. Tax education 101, folks, is that your property tax is based on several factors: the appraised value of your home, whether or not you receive a residential 4% versus a non-residential residence of 6%. And then the final factor is the millage. The higher the millage, the higher your tax bill is. And so if you, the drafts, the charts that Amy has put together for us, all those charts reflect the benefit that we receive on our millage being lower, because we give 100% of the LOST refund to our constituents, to our property owners. So if you live in the city of Charleston at a 4% tax millage rate, as opposed to 6%, you see there's almost a 20 millage decrease, because of the 100% refund of LOST. And that's been the standard over a decade of doing that. And in spite of other communities having maybe higher tax revenues, we're still outperforming them in several categories, particularly in our millage differential, and in the services we provide to our community, and in the pay we give, as Councilmember Waring brought out a few moments ago, to our fire and police. So if you don't give our property owners, our citizens who live in their primary residence in Charleston, the 100% refund on LST, you are increasing their taxes twofold. They're not getting 100% back of that refund, and the millage rate is going to increase. So as we play with this, you have to keep that in mind and be very transparent with our constituents that we're proposing, or if you support not giving 100% back of the LST money, you're going to give them a 2-time tax increase on their property bill. And that's something you've got to take into consideration regardless of what we do here. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Waring. You're on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You said it as I would. You went right to the AAA credit rating. But let's take it a step forward. Well, I guess a step backwards. During the 2 years of COVID, we didn't furlough one employee. North Charleston did. We didn't furlough one. And as far as on the other side of COVID, it's because every employer is having private sector, especially in your industry, council member in the restaurant industry, employees are, I don't know whether they left the planet, but they're hard to find, in particular, qualified employees. Now, we have had a AAA credit rating for over 2 decades, over 20 years, right? And we are the sponsor of the debt for Charleston Water System. The city of Charleston birthed Charleston Water System, maintained Charleston Water System. Now they're independent, but when it comes to them borrowing their debt, they come to us to have it approved. And guess what? They are a AAA credit rating entity. Only one in the state. North Charleston doesn't have a water department. It serves a region, not only our city, a region. And it's because of our credit rating helps them to get better credit rating. They supply water to Boeing, to Google. Those jobs wouldn't even be in this community if you couldn't do that. So I think we're looking at it in a myopic way. It is the strength of the financial strength of the city of Charleston for decades. It has allowed this region and Fortune 500 companies to locate here that would have never located here if we simply didn't have water and sewage. And that whole cost of water and sewage goes up if our credit rating doesn't stay at AAA. In particular, if their credit rating doesn't stay at AAA. And how have we done that? It was through fiscal management. So to say that people's trash hadn't been picked up on time, guess what? North Charleston's having trouble with that too. The PSD hadn't, but look at a little small area that they cover. We cover 150,000 people. So I just think we need to have a global view of what the city of Charleston does, frankly, for this not only for the citizens, for the region, for the state and the nation. I mean, look at where we rank. Look at where those areas rank, by the way. Where do they rank? We don't know. So I mean, we got people coming from all over the world to visit this place. It's not because we teetering. So we got passed on to us a wonderful legacy. And I got to be frank, when it comes to defraying, things do change. But when it comes to, there's no such thing as alternative facts, although that is out in our lexicon today. 9 times 9 is 81. There's no alternative to that. 2 times 2 is 4. There's no alternative to that. Facts are that it's because of our fiscal management and those that pass those on to us that we keep this AAA credit rating. What we need to do, frankly, is some of the monies that we are due. One reason we don't have much money as we should in stormwater. We've had a problem with collection all the stormwater fees, and we've known that for 5 years. We've kicked the can down the road. We've got a problem with millage right now, and I know I'm the town cry on it, but hopefully, I can remember when Mayor Rowley started talking about a pedestrian pathway on the new Ravenel Bridge, what we know as the Ravenel Bridge, and he got poo-pooed on it. Nobody's going to use it. It costs an extra $10 million to do it. Who says it was a bad idea today? Who? Well, when it comes to the city of Charleston collecting stormwater fees, we need to be proficient at it. and we're not. When it comes to millage rate, taxes that the city of Charleston pay us to deliver service, we have a runoff right now. We are supplementing. You saw it. You're supplementing, and the cost is higher than that, by the way. It is far more than the 33 mills that I talked about going to the PSD. It comes from taxpayers. Instead of coming to pay our employees, it's going out to them. And we are not factoring in the cost that it does when those properties come into the city. We pick up the trash. We pay for the fire. We pay for the recreation. We're not factoring that cost. So when you factor in that cost to their 93 mills above our 60.8 mills, suppose those dollars were coming into our treasury. We wouldn't have to raise the mills to the level that we're going to be looking at doing to pay our people. So if we increase efficiencies, a lot of the millage increases that we may have to consider, and we will have to consider today, it wouldn't be as high. And it will be quickly overcome by giving that tax credit back to the taxpayers. So I understand. I don't know that we're gonna win over any fans here. We've had our share of talking. At the end of the day, we're gonna get the vote on it. And if 7 votes is to reduce it, that'll happen. But I will say this: don't do it in a backdoor way. Let the taxpayers know. Others don't do that. Don't do that to the people. Our people deserve better than. If you're gonna raise people taxes, let them know you're doing it.
Thank you, sir. Councilmember Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councilmember Saccharin. No. So I was curious. So just because we've kind of gone a little off. If I missed it, currently state law requires us to give back how much?
I think it's 69% of the local option sales tax. Is that right, Amy?
Can you confirm?
You're on mute.
It's a weird calculation, Councilmember Parker. But so the rollback fund we have to give back, but it's a weird kind of calculation. So I can't tell you exactly.
Well, okay. Well, okay. To that point, and so what?
Approximately 70%.
Okay, 70%. Because again, like Councilmember Saccharin said, if we're explaining this, explain it to me as a homeowner, and that's what I'm asking. So it's a complicated process, but obviously, I've explained millage rates and things like that, but if we can uncomplicate it, so you say about 70%. So we collect it, and by state law, we have to give 70% back.
We have to give back the rollback fund. Yes.
Okay, so 70%. So I'm looking at my tax bill. I'm looking at how much that is. Okay, so Ross, I think you touched on this. So like you said, North Charleston is not giving so much. So they're not giving back 30%. They're just keeping the 30%.
Approximately.
Okay. So we're just basically looking at either raising mills, and this is what your slide is, correct, Amy? I mean, if you raise mills rather than the credit, vice versa, it's a wash, right? So that's what we're considering now. When I look at the tax credit, and I don't know, y'all have been doing this longer than I have, but when I look at the tax credit, I can say that I would gladly give up that tax credit if it meant those government services were going to be increased. You know what I mean?
I hear you.
That's just me. I don't know, again, where is there an offset? Where does the tax credit, does this have to do with our buckets, Amy? I mean, are there certain items that this money, the LOST funds can be used for, cannot be used for?
It goes in the general fund.
Okay, and there are no limits there.
No.
Okay.
It's not, no.
Okay. Stormwater fees. So real quick, just because Councilmember Waring brought it up, why are we not collecting them? Where are they going? Why haven't we collected them for 5 years?
They're collected on your water bill. We have an arrangement with Charleston Water Service. So they collect a monthly fee off every month when you pay your water bill, there's a $10 charge for the stormwater fee. And there are some municipalities that have used a property tax bill to collect their stormwater fee and get it all in one time, once a year, added to your property tax bill. And certainly, Councilmember Waring's point is that he thinks, and I don't disagree with this, that some people, for example, don't pay their water bill. And when they don't, we never collect the stormwater fee. But if you don't pay your property tax, you run into some real consequences from not paying your property tax bill. So you're more likely to collect the full amount from everybody if you put it on the property tax bill rather than the water bill. Of course, you know, that adds to that annual payment that people don't like to write that big check once a year. It adds to that versus spreading it out, but you pick up some collections along the way, is the point.
Okay, thank you. And it also, I mean, we're basically putting all of our stormwater and infrastructure, that fee that could help us, right, Councilmember Waring, on the property owner, whereas I guess the other way of thinking is that if it's on the water bill, the folks living here are paying.
That's correct. That's correct.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
All right. That was just a curiosity question, but okay.
Sure. No problem. We're all figuring this out. Some of it's pretty complicated. So Amy, if you don't mind kind of trying to finish up on the options that we had discussed, and it's all along the same lines of what we've been talking about for the last half hour, but it puts it to you on a couple of different options and maybe makes it a little clearer what decision we may end up with here.
Yes. Mayor, because of our population, all of that, our percentages between rollback and revenue are more equal. So it's really like 52.54%. So just so you know, it's a little bit different than the 70, that's what goes back to the state, but let's not get all into all that. So it's about 50-50, really, sort of. Anyway, so if we were to give back, obviously we have to do the rollback fund, the revenue fund. If we were to give back 75% of the revenue fund, it would be an additional $3.7 million in revenue to the city. And this right here, the equivalent millage reduction, that's how much it would still reduce our taxpayers' millage. Okay. So I think we were at 23.5 with 100%. So 75% would be 23.1 reduction in millage. 50%, or I'm sorry, 20.3. 50% of the revenue fund would give us $7.4 million. The reduction to taxpayers' tax bill would be 17.5 mils. And then 25% additional revenue to the city is 11.1, and reduction in millage would be 14.8 mils, and that's Charleston County. And then you'll see Berkeley County down here. Clear as mud.
Right.
Okay.
Keep rolling.
Okay. So how will this affect our citizens? So Councilmember Shade, I have 6% on the next slides, but 4% for Charleston County, Berkeley County. If we gave back 75%, keeping 25% increase in taxes of $55.62. 50% is 111, 166.86 for keeping 75%, giving back 25%. And then Berkeley County, the numbers are here.
That's on a $500,000 home.
Right.
Right.
Okay. 6% property, the savings are the same because it's based on your appraised property value, but the taxes are a little bit higher. So any questions there?
Councilmember Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Quickly, so if any of these, let's just say, for example, if we took away, if we reduced the amount of the credit, can we as a city, are we able to say, can you go back to that last 2 slides back, please? So total additional revenue to the city. I mean, if we choose these options, if we eliminate a certain percentage of the tax credit, can we say that we're putting those funds into the stormwater fund?
No, this is general fund.
Okay, so
Stormwater is a totally different budget.
Again, well, I'm asking questions and I'm going back to kind of Council Member Saccharin's point. If we're going to do something, taxpayers need to understand it. So I certainly, as a taxpaying citizen, want to know where the additional revenue to the city is going. So I'm curious now as a council member, if we have a credit decrease, where is that fund just goes right to the general fund and we decide where we use it? Or is there a way to earmark it or utilize it for something else? I mean, I know we've talked about referendums and things like that. That's not this, that's where we're earmarking funds. But again, that's just my question. If we did something like this, can we do that?
So it would go to the general fund, and that would allow us to afford to pay for this employee compensation pay raise that we're proposing.
And it would allow us to do more of the recommendations.
Which allows us to be more competitive, to hire employees, to perform our services. So it's kind of a ripple effect, but it goes to the general fund is the short answer.
And it would also fund some of the items that the departments have requested that we can't fund.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there's a laundry list of things that it would go towards.
See, I'm sorry. I got way past what the slide that we ended on and why we ended up here. Okay. So we are raising, the reason for this is we're earmarking this for the pay raise. And yes.
So the $7.8 million deficit, if you want to call it that, because we don't really have a budget to have a deficit, but that's what it is right now. That would help fund that so we can balance the budget, because we have to have a balanced budget. So that's what that would go towards.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay. Any questions on this? Okay, so we're here, right? We're good with 4%, 6%. Yes?
Yes, keep rolling.
Okay. So scenarios, some of the things that we talked about in ad hoc yesterday was just a straight millage increase. Increase of 5 mills, would yield an $8.5 million in additional tax revenue. And so we would have more than we needed to balance the budget, so we could actually fund some more items that we're not able to fund. 4 mills would be 6.8, and we'd still need to cut about $1 million from the budget. No millage increase, but just changing our local option sales tax policy and keeping 50% of the revenue fund would yield 7.4 million. So we'd still need to cut about $400,000 in expenditures from the recommended items that we had. And then increasing the millage by 3 mills and keeping 25% of local option sales tax revenue would yield 8.8. No cuts would be necessary, and we would be able to fund about additional $1 million in expenditures. Effect on the taxpayers. So the 5 mil increase, it would be about a $100 tax increase to a 4% homeowner and $150 on a 6% property owner. 4 mills would be $80 and $120. For no millage increase, but keeping 50% of local option sales tax, property owners tax bill would increase $111.24 for Charleston County and $51.74 in Berkeley County. And then 3 mills and keeping 25%, 4% property owner would be $115.62, 6%, $145.62. In Berkeley County, the numbers you see there. And then just to show you the effect on property tax revenue, our current budget right now, it's property taxes is 43.26% of our budget, our revenue budget. If we raise that for scenario 2, our property tax percentage of revenue would be 45% of our total revenues, and then 44.14% for scenario 3, which was 25% of the local option sales tax revenue. Questions?
All right.
Amy, quick question.
Uh-huh.
In all the scenarios, what was a 3% millage increase due to property taxes? Just a 3% millage increase.
3% was, oh gosh, I gotta go back. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, 3 mil increase. I'm sorry.
3 mil increase would generate 5.1, so then we'd still be about $2.7 million out that we'd have to fund or cut, I mean.
A 3 mil increase with no
Right.
reduction in the LOST. How much would that increase a property owner's taxes?
$60.
Can somebody in my budget office do that calculation for me really fast,
Okay.
please?
I think it'd be $60 for
Probably.
using this example that you have here, Amy.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, that's right.
And
Yes.
$90 for the 6%ers.
Right.
Yeah.
And then
He is correct.
And then you're still short about $2.5 million roughly.
Correct. So we'd have to make some adjustments to expenditures. Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah. Councilmember Waring?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Amy, 5 mils does it?
Yes, and more than does it.
5 mils will carry us to 65.8 net. I mean, I know that's an estimate because, I don't know, loss might be a little bit more. Up front, everybody knows it, clean, and then 100% of the loss goes back immediately to begin to reduce the 5 mils that we increase. You know, the taxes by this, you know, you're putting a whole lot of effort in. If we voted a 5 mil increase in the property taxes, we got the revenue to do what we need to do, take care of our employees, etc. And by the same token, our taxpayers get treated fairly by getting the rebate that they're accustomed to. So, I mean, this, you know, you can do 3 of this and a little bit of lost revenue and all of that. Hey, 5 mils does it.
Councilmember Parker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What was the mill increase last year?
It was
3.
3 mils.
Thank you.
Mhm.
And
So,
how long did it take to recover that?
So it didn't actually, as you can see, we raised it, but with the tax, when we set the millage for this year, we're actually less. So we raised 3 mils in 2022, but with the tax credit factor, we're less because of the net millage.
so y'all, if y'all don't mind, I'm just going to, Councilmember Waring, I promise I won't carry on too long. But I do want to make the pitch that we use a portion of the LOST. I hear and respect all your points, Councilmember, and those other council members who have made remarks about not using any of the LOST. But let me just share that it's a sales tax. It's been collected in our county for decades now. So folks are paying sales tax in the city of Charleston, both our residents and our visitors. And so in a way, I like to mentally think that by using some of the LOST for city services that we're capitalizing or using some of those sales tax dollars that are spent by the many visitors that we have in Charleston. And I kind of think that's a good thing. You know what, even if you used 50% of our available credit, which is only a portion of what by law gets credited to property owners, even if you just use that portion of it, it would generate enough nearly to cover the shortfall we're looking for. I'll remind everyone, it's legal. It's authorized by the state legislature, by the state government, just like, as I mentioned before, we take 5% of hospitality accommodations taxes and put it to our general fund. Cities and towns are allowed to do this. Mount Pleasant and North Charleston both do it. I think by, as I mentioned earlier, to remain competitive, to have that funding source is a good thing for our city long-term, for future mayors and city councils to have that resource, that funding source that will add to that pie chart that Amy just showed us a minute ago, showing all the different sources that we have to rely on to provide the services to our citizens. Again, it's a little bit, Councilmember Waring, like two sides of the same coin, I admit, and I think it all works out in the end, and I respect council's decision which way you want to go in order to fund this important employee compensation package that we're recommending. But I do think long-term, to fund municipal government requires multiple funding streams. This is one tool we could have in our toolbox, not just this year, but in the future, to fairly compensate our public servants, our police, fire, and our non-sworn employees, all the way down to the folks, as mentioned, that collect our garbage and clean our ditches, and to provide the kinds of services that we need to. Other towns around us do it. I think part of what led us to this competitive disadvantage was the fact that we weren't relying on this funding source to be a part of our budget. So also it depends a little bit on our sales tax. Already, Amy said earlier that we're projecting more LOST for 22 than we originally budgeted. I think the original budget amount was $23,720,000. We now believe it'll be more like 28,000. Well, I would make the case to you that even if you use 15% of that to fund general fund, to fund these important things that we're wanting to fund, that 15% reduction off of the 2023 proposed budget would be still more of a credit than what we originally budgeted in 2022. 85% of our 23 projected LOST credit of $28,365,000 is in fact $24,110,250, which is more than what we budgeted to be able to credit in 2022 rather. So it adds a funding source for us. It allows us to take care of the needs for this year without having a millage increase. I'll now be quiet, and I respect the will of council to make a motion, and maybe y'all could just could we just indicate by a vote or show of hands whether you want to use LOST or not, and if you don't, I get the message, and I'll propose the budget to you accordingly. I propose that we use it. Councilmember Bowden.
I was just going to ask if we were raising our hands if we supported using it.
Oh, okay.
If so, I'm wholeheartedly supporting using it. To me, this is the easiest funding source to explain to people. You know, when they ask why we are not getting certain things based on, you know, what we are as a city, which is a tourism-based city. It strikes me that this is a pretty easy way to explain how we get those things. We have just chosen not to in the past. And that's just a choice we've made, and that works out for people great. But we've seen where it's gotten us in terms of ability to collect trash and dig ditches. And I think it's time to make just a more responsible choice.
Thank you. Councilmember Parker.
Councilmember Waring had his hand up before me.
Okay. Councilmember Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 5 mills balance the budget. This is more a question for you. you want to balance it using lost revenue. It gets balanced with 5 mills. What ditches doesn't get cleaned? What employees doesn't get paid if you use the 5 mills? In other words, the budget is balanced either way.
It gets balanced either way, absolutely.
Right. So what is it? And I'm really trying to find out something I'm missing in your explanation. If the budget is balanced with 5 mills, what is it that doesn't get done? Maybe that's the way I should ask it. What doesn't get done with the balanced budget with 5 mills that will get done if we use lost revenue?
It all gets paid, but Amy, if you'd go back to one of those pie charts, I just would use the example of the diversity of funding sources that for the long-term benefit of the city of Charleston to be able to conduct business and provide services, I feel it would be in our best interest to have as diverse a toolbox of funding sources and revenues as possible. This is a legal way for us to fund our city government, and I think we ought to add it to the toolbox long-term, not just for this year, but for future mayors and city councils to have it at their disposal. So I guess, like I said, it's two sides of the same coin for balancing this year's budget. You can do it through 5 mills, or you can do it through 50% of the lost credit. It works out the same, but I think for the long term, this is better for the city personally.
But Mr. Mayor, that you said that the second time you said it's a legal way to do it, and we all understand that. But so is the military. It's legal also.
Yes, sir.
And it is the most transparent. And I'll say this, and I think we all came extremely close, those of us who were here during the pandemic. It was in our toolbox, and we came extremely close to having to use the lost revenue during an extreme hardship that was global. Now, we came pretty close to having to do that, but what we did for those who were not on council, Ms. Parker and Mr. Bowden, we actually took out the pencil and we cut. And that's how we balanced the budget. But if we didn't get to enough cuts, we were not going to furlough people. We would have used the lost revenue. Now, that's a situation where under extreme emergencies, like a pandemic, you still have that in the toolbox. But during the best of times, right now, our revenues are the most they've ever been in the history of the city of Charleston. This is the time you're going to go to that versus having it in reserve for emergencies. So again, it's not like it's not in our toolbox in the event of a hardship, or let's just say we do get a recession. The economy is going to slow down, and we know sales tax revenue will follow. The millage, again, is the more dependable source of revenue. Anyway, I'm repeating myself.
Yeah.
The main thing is that I don't want the new people to think that ditches don't get dug and people don't get paid because we don't use lost revenue.
Yeah, right. No, absolutely.
That was my point. Thank you.
Absolutely. Councilmember Parker and then Appel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just say this, I'll be honest, and I know it's getting late. I just worry, raising taxes that's not going to guarantee us more employees. But obviously this is a tool in the toolbox. I understand that, but we're going to raise taxes and we don't know if services will get better. We hope, right? We can be optimistic. But anyway, Amy, I should have asked this earlier. Are there more slides coming? Is this the only scenario that you've put together to make the 7.8 million that we need possible?
For this presentation, yes.
Okay, so are there any, what other options are there to get where we need to be? I guess, like you said, Councilmember Waring, just like you did 2 years ago,
you can cut the proposed expenses. You can cut the recommended pay increase. You can cut other expenses would be the other alternative. And it could be some combination of the two that gets us to a balanced budget. We could cut a little more, we could, you know, do a little less of,
But we continue and we keep talking about, you know, just the pay increase that. I mean, are there other areas in our city that we can make up the 7.8 million?
right, we had the recommended $12 million in funding other requirements. 2 million or so were considered essential. So that left about $10 million of expenses that you could, you know, go through line by line, as we discussed a little while ago, and cut.
So
Okay.
Councilmember Parker, exactly what the mayor said, we're about 7.8 with all those additional recommendations and the pay plan. So we, like, what I started out with was cuts. We'll just go through and start cutting.
Gotcha. Okay. And that's again why I would really, even for this conversation, I just really would like to see those requests because I think that would help. But all right, thank you.
Councilmember Appel.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and I'll be brief on this. A 5 mil increase or a 50% loss reduction, it gets us to the same place. There's no question about that. Councilman Waring is 100% right. You're 100% right about that. I think where the difference comes in, and the mayor touched on this, is that providing us a smaller, a more of the loss credit to the city puts us on a more sound foundation and financial footing for years to come, right? So we have that sort of flexibility from this different revenue source that's not directly tied to millage. It's a function of sales tax. There's a potential here that if we roll back the loss, we're not going to have to talk about millage again next year and the year after and the year after and the year after. It puts us on a more firm financial footing by this alternative revenue source that's not the same as millage. So while it's true this year, if you just take a snapshot of this upcoming budget, 50% rollback of lost, 5 mil increase, it's two sides of the same coin. But what we've seen, and we've talked about this earlier, is some of the competitive advantages that North Charleston and other jurisdictions have had is due to the fact that they have more lost revenue to play with every single year due to policies that they've instituted years ago. So that's what I think the distinction is here. It's about putting the city on a more firm financial footing prospectively, so we don't have to have so many of these yearly discussions about tax increases. And in terms of the transparency point, I would just say it's very easy to communicate this at a high level. The alternative is a big tax increase. That's door number one. And then door number two is we're just incrementally reducing the amount of the tax credit you're getting. I mean, we could be transparent in both realms. It's not about playing fast and loose or playing games with the taxpayer. The loss credit is something that is authorized by law for us to roll back. And I think we can be very upfront and direct with our taxpayers if we decide to go in that direction. I'm very open to the lost rollback. And I think we've got time between now and finalizing the budget to take a closer look at some of these additional expenses. I would agree with my colleague, Councilman Gregory, that we put the pay increases in a lockbox, to use a Al Gore term. Let's not play with that. We need to raise pay for our employees. But if there's something that the IT department has asked for that can wait another year, let's have that discussion between now and the finalization of the budget, and we'll get there.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Parker, just I forwarded you the email that
Yes, thank you.
Amy had sent to us. It includes that file with all the detailed items on it.
Yes.
Councilmember Gregory, Shade, and Waring.
I mean, either way we go, we're going to be on sound financial footing.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, using that as a basis for using or not using loss is just, for me, is just not a good argument. The one difference, though, I think that distinguishes between the two, one is guaranteed and the other isn't. The other is, I mean, we can project all we want, but we have no idea what ultimately will happen with the economy in terms of a slowdown. I would prefer to leave the loss in reserve, so to speak, just in case. For us to start now just routinely utilizing those funds, to me, is not sound financial management, at least that's just my opinion. If we can get to where we need to get to with 5 mil plus, we'll be able to balance our budget and still have a few dollars left for other things. I just think that if we start using a loss, and it's not to help us increase anybody's pay salary, okay, because we're holding that harmless. There is another option other than loss. We've sort of talked about it a bit, but again, we can always go back and cut expenditures. That's not something that I think that we should do either, because our departments have been suffering over the years, and what we're really doing is trying to catch them up. I think the 5 mil increase is cleaner and the way to go. We leave our loss, okay, where it is until we needed it. And I think that Council Member Waring brought it up. I mean, I was the one person totally against us using loss in the prior year because of this very same reason, okay? And what we did was we went back and we cut expenditures. I said, we don't need to do either. Just do the 5 mil, it's clean. The lost revenue would offset the increase to the taxpayer. For me, that's the best way to go. And you leave that low option sales tax alone. We don't know what's to come. And it is not a guarantee as raising taxes by 5 mil. It's clean. And you leave your loss alone.
I respect that opinion. Councilmember Shade?
Thank you, Mayor. If Mr. Mayor, I'm not going to vote for any budget that reduces the 100% refund of local option sales tax money. And this is the reason why. If you don't give your property owner citizen 100% of that refund, you are increasing their taxes. That's just a bottom line problem. And you're also increasing the taxes 2 ways. You are reducing the amount of the refund, and you're hurting the millage that benefit that we're getting. We just heard over and over again, even with a 3 mil increase, and I want my colleagues to hear this, even with a 3 mil increase, by giving 100% of that LOST refund, our millage went down. And the millage is an important factor that is used to determine a person's property tax bill. So the tax bill that they get is based on millage. And by even increasing it by 3 mils, we reduce our millage rate and our tax rate. So if you think that you're creating a more sound financial standing by LOST money refunds, not 100% going back to the taxpayer, that's misleading to the people who are listening on to this conversation. Because as Councilmember Waring just pointed out, and Councilmember Gregory just pointed out, is that we have the funds and we have the mechanisms to 100% funding our needs. So the reason that we have problems with basic services is not because we're not giving, withholding 100% of the refund of LOST money. That's not the cause of all that. The cause of all that is that we just have not kept up with the pay increases that we needed to do to keep our employees. So whether or not the lost money, 100% of that was refunded, or 75% of that was refunded, or 25% of that was refunded, had no bearing whatsoever. Had no bearing whatsoever on our trash being picked up and not being picked up on a timely basis. And to suggest otherwise is somewhat misleading to the people listening on to this conversation. So we have other mechanisms. Councilmember Gregory pointed them all out. We have other mechanisms on how to balance this budget. You can do a millage increase. That's one way of doing it. You can do a millage increase of three mills, or you can do an increase of 5 mills, or you can do a combination of 3 mills and finding ways to reduce those expenditures by $2.7 million by cutting out some stuff. So we have other options available to us, but I think that we're hurting ourselves and we're hurting our taxpayers if we don't give them 100% of that tax refund. I'm not going to vote for it. I'm not going to support it. If that's going to come out at the end of the budget, that's where I stand. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. All right. Y'all want to give me some guidance on this?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to have a chance to talk. Yes,
sir.
You said I'd come in.
Councilmember Waring. Yes, sir.
And Councilman Gregory said it, but Councilmember Appel, there is not an economist worth their salt in the country that would say sales tax is more stable than property tax. Seriously, it is not. Now you may find one that doesn't have, that may be teaching at an unaccredited college or something like that, but there is not an economist in the country that will say sales tax is more stable than property tax. And that's because of so I'm gonna give you a mulligan on that one. I think you spoke on that. Giving back the lost revenue is an inflation fighter. And if you don't believe it, look at our millage rate in 22 and look at the millage rate in 09. It's higher in 09 than it was this year. And it's been stable. And if it's been so good for North Charleston, look at their millage rate. They're using both, and their millage rate's still higher than ours. And when it came to the tough times, they furloughed people. They laid off all of the part-time people. We didn't do that. We didn't lay off. We didn't furlough people, and we still had another tool in the toolbox during hard times. So the part about it being more stable, that's just not accurate. As a matter of fact, why don't we get an economist to come and get the economists at the College of Charleston, at the various colleges around, and don't take it from me. Take it from the economists to say, what is the most stable source of revenue from which government operates from? It is not sales taxes. It is, frankly, property taxes. So that part is just, I had to kind of speak out on that. Now, one of the things that you've said, because of the new legislation that came out of the state, you are spot on. And I'm actually excited about some of the things I hope you will suggest, and some of us will learn about some of this new legislation that allows us to, at that point, some of maybe usury fees to create an additional source of revenue from which the city can use for growth. Now that is a new source of revenue, not the local option sales tax. That source of revenue has been with us for almost 20 years. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Right, but we hadn't used it. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, I don't think we can take a vote because it wasn't listed on the agenda.
Oh, it's a workshop, yeah.
Is there a way, because I know you've been trying to get this,
Yeah.
Amy had a slide that had the 3 different scenarios listed,
Yeah,
just to get an idea from each council member what scenario they would want her to
Yeah.
proceed with, just because we have a deadline coming up. We have to
Right.
send the ad into the paper November 17th, and today's the 1st.
okay.
So I don't know if
So,
that would help.
so can I just ask for a consensus with a raise of hands? And I already know clearly Councilmember Shade, Waring, and Gregory have all said they'd prefer a millage as opposed to monkeying with the LOST. Who all would like to see, just admitting that we can look at the expenses some more, and we can cut some of those expenses potentially after we all review those one more time. But who would prefer to use a millage rate to balance the budget at the end of the day? Show me your hands by now. Ross and Carl are putting their hands up like they're asking to be recognized. Okay.
No, I'm just in my car, so I was raising the hand virtually.
You're raising, and raise your hand virtually if you don't mind.
Would you repeat the question, Mayor?
Do you want to do like you said and use a millage to balance the budget this year after we
Yes.
cut more expenses, or do you want to use the LOST?
I want to use the millage and cut expenses.
Right. Okay, millage and cut expenses. Anybody else?
Oh, wait a minute. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
But if we went 5 mil, we won't have to cut expenses.
Right.
So
Well, that's right.
let's be clear.
Yeah,
Okay. So if we're voting on using the 5 mil to
right.
balance this budget,
Yeah,
my answer is yes.
okay. Who would like to use 5 mils to balance this budget at this point, the way it stands? 1, 2, 3. All right. Who would like to use LOST to balance his budget? I got 4 folks, I think, showing of hands.
Okay, I have I have you, Mayor, Bowden, Appel.
And Sacklin. Okay. And how many?
There's
So
another, right?
the other option is to cut our expenses some more, but use the millage increase to make up the difference.
Correct.
It might turn out to be 3, it might turn out to be 4, just depending on what we agree to cut.
I would agree. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're okay with that?
Yes,
Okay.
I can't vote twice, but
No, you can vote. You
We're
can vote
not
twice.
voting. We are not voting. This is just,
okay,
This is not a recorded vote. We're just trying to get a consensus here.
I would consider that as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. And that would be you and Shade and Mitchell and Brady and Waring and Kevin. All right. I will come back to y'all with a proposed budget that will do just that. We'll look at I do want you all to look at the a list of the master request list of the other expenses, not the payroll compensation adjustment, but the other items. And y'all let us know back anything that sticks out to you. And otherwise, we'll come back to you with a proposed budget that's balanced.
And Mr. Mayor, can Amy send us the summary page?
Yes, she'll do
So,
this.
Mayor, we had discussed sending my slides from yesterday that kind of summarized all of that rather than the full long list. So I don't know what you want me to do now. You just want the summary?
I think you send them both, if you don't mind. Send them both. Everybody can see everything.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I actually want to thank you for this process. I
Yeah,
almost
thank
felt like I was back in business school again. I mean, it really was a good exercise in the to and fro.
Yes, sir.
Because if I were new coming on the council, I would have found that the conversation and the comments extremely helpful. In particular, I want to obviously thank Amy and her team because those slides, in some cases without proper explanation can have you cross-eyed, but
Right.
I think the majority of definitely made heads or tails out of the explanation and the graphs that you put up. So I actually love the conversation that we had.
I did.
Well, thank you for letting me say my piece about it, and I'll shut up for another year at least, maybe more.
That's how it works, man.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
do we have any discussion over the issue we talked about in executive session?
I'll get back to you on that.
Okay, just want to make sure we don't lose it.
We
Okay,
won't. No,
Thank you.
we're already looking into some things. Councilmember Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Amy, on the master request list, some things are highlighted, gray, green, purple. Are there indications on these lists that show what you have included in these proposal, like the 12
You're
million?
gonna have to wait till I send you the summary list.
Gotcha. Okay.
I will resend it with kind of a key to what those color codes mean. So you know what each of the colors mean.
Perfect.
The
Thank you.
summary list will do that for you.
Thank
Great.
you.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I know I haven't spoken yet. I was just listening.
We've been waiting.
I'm one of them. I'm one of the person who don't like to raise taxes at all, because the fact is I've seen too many people lose their home because of this taxes, and that was my case. And I understand my colleagues. I understand the rationale of the budget, but I've been here almost 20 years dealing with this every year, dealing with the budget, and I don't want to tax the people out of the places that they have. And some of my people that I've seen lost homes because of it. And the way the economy is, and with the job type of employment that they have, and the money that they got coming in. And that was my dilemma on this altogether when I raised my taxes. But I know we have to do it. The same thing, I'm working in my church the same way. I have to renovate my church and I have to go back and get money for it. And I didn't want to do that either, but I didn't have a choice, you see. And since I'm the head trustees in the church. So it's a thing when it comes to raising taxes. It's something always get to me with raising taxes so much on the people. And the way the economy is now, with we don't even have a job making the money here, even to pay what we have to pay now, since the escalating in rents is coming up, and escalating so much other things are coming up with people. And I just had a problem with the raising taxes. That's why I looked at the 8.5, but coming back down to the 6.8, which is the full mills. And I said, well, instead of getting to the higher one, I go to the middle one, which is the lowest one, and voted on that. But I just always have reservation in the raising of taxes. I know we have to do something, but anytime I get to the point of raising taxes, it's giving me a burn in my chest, burn in my stomach, because I know what the tax is going to be for some people who's even with the 4% what they have to pay. And we got a lot of these seniors out here cannot even afford to even make ends meet right now, going through it and taxing people out of their homes, and they'll be gone, which a lot of us is gone already. So that was my take on it, and looking at it, the budget, and looking at the budget for the past almost 16 years, longer than that since I was here.
Yeah.
And that was my dilemma on it. And that's why I wasn't saying nothing before, and listening to all the comments and listening to seeing all the slides that Amy did, which she did a marvelous job on it, which she always does, but I just had my dilemma, my problem on it. And I know we need it to give people raises. I know what North Charleston did. I was working with some of the people in North Charleston when it happened to them. They laid off over 200 and some odd people during that time, and they was getting the money, and they still laid them off. But they got to remember that in the city of Charleston, we're a little different from North Charleston, because North Charleston have all these big plants that they get all the tax revenues from, like the Boeing plant, different companies they have up there, the aviation authority, the airport, and all these other things. We don't have that here in the city of Charleston. Ours based a lot on tourism and things like that. When tourism is down, then our money is down, very down. That's what happened even with COVID. Didn't make any money off the garages, didn't make any money off this and that. So that put us in a dilemma, but we still didn't laid off people, we went and borrowed against our reserve. You see, and that's something that no one have ever done, and they never have done since I've been here. But we did it because of our employees, and we didn't want to see them without anything at all. So that was something that we did, and that was something to me was a marvelous thing that we did as the council did to keep people working, at least getting something in their pocket and something in their home to be able to keep their home operating.
Right.
So that is my dilemma on it, and I just wanted to kind of share that. But I know we have to do something, and we have to look at it very seriously because we're going to need to balance this budget. And I'm just going to ponder it on some more, but I just voted on that particular one because I figured that was the less of the two. And I'm just going to ponder it on it some more. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. And if there's any relief to that heartburn, it's in that one chart that Councilmember Waring points out that our net taxes are less than they were in 2009. To his point again, that we return all the local option sales tax to our taxpayers. So that's the net effect over time. You hadn't really increased taxes. In fact, it's gone down a little bit since 2009. But the way all this plays out, as I said, it's two sides of a coin. You raise the millage a little bit, and then the credit equalizes over time, and we've actually gone down a little bit over time. You just, if somebody complains to you, you might have to call on Councilmember Waring to help explain all that. All right. Anything else for the good of the order? Thank you for the long meeting, y'all. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Amy.